Well, hello, how are you? My name is Jeff. I'm so glad you could be with me today. Now, before we get started, I'm going to tell you a little story. Don't worry, it's a short one. On August 21st, 1945, a critical mass experiment was being conducted at the remote Omega site of Los Alamos Laboratory in New Mexico. It involved an attempt to build a neutron reflector to reduce the mass required for the plutonium core to obtain criticality. I'm thinking this is a way to make them use less plutonium when they make bombs. There was an accident during the experiment that caused American physicist Harry Dacklian to be exposed to a high dose of radiation. A similar thing happened to Canadian physicist and chemist Louis Slotin. Both men died within months of their accidents. And I don't want to bring everybody down, but I'm trying to make a point here. You see, neither Harry nor Louis gained superpowers. They didn't shrink or grow, they didn't become Hulks or obtain invisibility. They just died. Hollywood and the comic book industry gave us false hope that radiation would do amazing things to the human body and to insects. But that's not true, right? It was a lie. Radiation does nothing amazing, it just kills. Today I'm going to talk about a film that was first shown on Mystery Science Theater 3000 on August 3rd, 1991. It was an American black and white science fiction film, The Amazing Colossal Man, directed by Bert I. Gordon and starring Harry Langdon, Cathy Downs, William Houston, Larry Thor, and many other wonderful people. This was the episode in which Tom and Crow hide in a cardboard fort to get out of doing their chores. The Mads invent a plant that can review music, in which we get an early appearance by Kevin, while Joel invents a tattoo that can be changed. Joel attempts but fails to teach the bots how to treat somebody who has a spouse that's been horrendously injured. Joel pretends to be 50 feet tall, and the bots try to help him with his depression, and Joel and the bots meet the star of the film, Glenn Langan. For those new to the show, while I'm talking about a film that was first shown on Mystery Science Theater 3000, I'm more talking about the film itself and not so much about Joel and the bots' treatment of the film, though if you stick around to the end, there'll be a little something. Now, I need to tell you right away that this might be one of those shows where I have to replace the video of the actual film in the second part of the show with stills from the movie. And this is because, well, this film has never been released on DVD. In fact, in the 90s, it was released on VHS, but it was quickly pulled from the market. Why is this? Well, remember the film The Slime People? The dark-haired actress in that film, Susan Hart? Well, if you remember that episode, she married James A. Nicholson, one of the founders of American International Pictures, the company who released this film. Allegedly, she owns the rights to 11 AIP films, including 5 that were shown on Mystery Science Theater 3000. This includes It Conquered the World, Invasion of the Saucermen, I Was a Teenage Werewolf, Terror from the Year 5000, and this one, The Amazing Colossal Man. Now, according to an article that I read on Reddit from 5 years ago, Susan will sue at the drop of a hat. She sued, allegedly, Shout Factory for showing stills of the film in a documentary they put out. If this is true, then Susan doesn't understand the concept of fair use. Anyway, from what I understand, this is one of those gray situations which no one really knows who owns the rights to what. So as far as this episode, we'll just see how it goes. Growing to a giant, to a monster. When will it stop? The Amazing Colossal Man! Now, way back when I did the King Dinosaur episode, I gave a short biography of Bert I. Gordon, and since that was a while ago, I'll go over it again. Bert Ira Gordon was born in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and lived from 1922 to 2023. He went to the University of Wisconsin, but dropped out to serve in the Air Force in World War II. With his new wife, he made television commercials in St. Paul, Minnesota. But in his heart, he wanted to make motion pictures, so he, with his family, moved to California. He was a production assistant on the TV show Racket Squad and a cameraman on Serpent Island from 1954. Now, King Dinosaur was his first film in 1955, but in 1957 he directed 3 films: The Cyclops, The Amazing Colossal Man, and The Beginning of the End. You see, by this time he was specializing in the technique of composite shots, ways to make small things look big. He, for some reason, loved that. Some of his other films he made were The Three in 1958, Earth vs. the Spider, War of the Colossal Beast, and Attack of the Puppet People. In 1960, he created Tormented, and then there was Village of the Giants from 1965 and Fruit of the Gods from 1976. Of course, there were many, many more. Now, this film started off with an attempt by AIP to capitalize on the success of The Incredible Shrinking Man, which was released 6 months earlier in 1957. Now, they were going to base this film on Homer Ian Flynn's novel The Nth Man from 1928 about a man who was 10 miles high. It was to have Roger Corman as the director, and it was to be written by the writer of many Corman films, Charles B. Griffith. Apparently, it was to star Dick Miller. Griffith wrote it as a comedy, but then Corman dropped out and was replaced by Bert I. Gordon. Soon Griffith realized he couldn't work with Gordon, so he quit, and Mark Hanna stepped in. Mark Hanna, who lived from 1917 to 2003, was Charles B. Griffith's writing partner on such films as The Gunslinger, Not of This Earth, Flesh and the Spur, and The Undead, all from 1956. After The Amazing Colossal Man, the two never worked together again, but I don't know if this film had anything to do with it. Now, I did read that Bert I. Gordon denied this film had anything to do with The Incredible Shrinking Man, except that he and the writer, Richard Matheson, who wrote the book it was based on, probably read the same newspaper articles about nuclear testing in Nevada. That might be true, as there was a lot of paranoia over the effects of radiation. But one can't deny these similarities in the titles, right? The Incredible Shrinking Man, The Amazing Colossal Man. Anyway, now the end of the film takes place in Las Vegas, but from what I understand, Bert didn't have the type of money to film in Las Vegas. So he sent one of his assistants to Vegas to take a lot of pictures, and those were blown up and used in the movie. The budget was about $130,000, and it was probably shot in about 2 weeks. The star of the film was Glenn Langan, who plays Lieutenant Colonel Glenn Manning. Glenn lived from 1917 to 1991. His film career began in 1939. His first credited film was The Return of Dr. X, the film in which Humphrey Bogart played in his only science fiction horror film. He was one of those actors who kept on working, although never really a star, throughout the 1940s and 50s. By this time, his career was winding down, and he was doing a lot of TV work. Besides TV, in his later career, he'd be making films like Jungle Heat from 1957, Mutiny in Outer Space from 1965, and The Women of the Prehistoric Planet from 1966. Cathy Downs plays Carol Forrest. Catherine N. Downs lived from 1926 to 1976. She was originally a model who was discovered by 20th Century Fox. Wait till the boys get a look at Cathy Downs, 18-year-old former model working in Nob Hill. She'll probably be tabbed as Hollywood's Dimple Girl. She has 4 on her cheeks. Her acting career took off quickly, starring in such films as My Darling Clementine and The Dark Corner in 46, For You I Die in 47, and the Abbott and Costello comedy, The Noose Hangs High from 1948. For unknown reasons, she was dropped by Fox in 1947 and was never hired by another major studio. By 1959, she began appearing in low-budget films such as The Phantom from 10,000 Leagues from 1955, The Sea Creature in 1956, and Missile to the Moon in 1959. Like many actors of the time, whose career was not going well, she did a lot of television work. Now, Carol's last acting was in 1968, and I would like to point out that neither Glenn nor Carol returned for the sequel, War of the Colossal Beast, the following year. William Hudson plays Dr. Paul Lindstrom. William lived from 1919 to 1974 and spent most of his career as an actor playing uncredited parts. A couple of exceptions to this were when he played Ranger Clark in Rocky Jones Space Ranger, and Special Agent Mike Andrews in the Emmy Award-winning TV spy drama I Led 3 Lives. A couple of films that he did appear in that might be of some interest are The Sea Creature from 56 and Attack of the 50-Foot Woman from 1958. He also had a twin brother who was an actor, John Hudson. Larry Thor plays Major Eric Coulter, MD. Larry lived from 1916 to 1976. He was a radio newscaster and announcer, a university professor, and also an actor. He was another man who did mostly uncredited work. And the last actor I'll talk about is Gene Moorhead, who plays Woman in Bathtub. Jean was born in 1935, and I only bring her up because I did a biography of her a few years ago. She was a model and was Playboy magazine's Playmate of the Month for October 1955. Besides a lot of TV work, her most famous role was that of the leader of the female gang in the Ed Wood scripted The Violent Years from 1956. So what is the Amazing Colossal Man? Before we get started, however, I want to show that poster again. A poster like this is a promise by the filmmakers. This is what every man, woman, and child who entered the theaters in 1958 was waiting for. Keep that in mind as we watch the film. I really hope we don't have to wait to the last 4 minutes of the film to see this type of action. And I want to give this film props right away for not wasting a lot of time with introducing characters and whatnot. They jump right into the action. Right away, it fills me with hope. Lieutenant Colonel Glenn Manning is in a bunker, ready to witness the test of an atomic bomb. Just before the explosion, a plane crashes near the detonation area.
Colonel, no!
Points for being a good human, Glenn, but in this case, I don't think you can help them.
I order you to return to your friends!
And maybe the moral lesson of this film is always listen to your superiors. And for the rest of the film, I'm wondering what happened to the people on the plane. Later at the hospital, Glenn has looked better. His fiancée Carol shows up and she is understandably upset. She meets a reporter who quickly puts his foot in his mouth.
Brought him out yet? They don't hold much hope for him. It's quite a mess when they got to him.
The good news for Glenn is, although he looks bad, his eyes still work, so that's something. But hey, I'm a glass half full type of guy. And we get a nice, long, lingering look at a nurse getting Glenn's room ready for a night's sleep. In the morning, however, the nurse notices something has changed.
His skin. It's not burned. Why, he's going to be all right, isn't he?
Of course he's not going to be all right, but we have the advantage of knowing the name of the film.
What explanation would you give for the new skin that has grown on this man in a matter of hours?
What possible connection could there be to the bomb? A man survives an explosion, a plutonium explosion. And then for some reason or other, his skin heals more rapidly than usual. What is the mystery, gentlemen?
What is the mystery, gentlemen? How about the fact that his skin healed overnight? I burned myself a month ago and I can still see the mark on the back of my hand. And it hurt for like 2 weeks. So this guy goes on and on and on and on as we watch stock footage of atomic tests. And then some of the footage that we already saw.
The fact that Glenn Manning lived after the blast and that new skin completely replaced the burned dead tissue in a matter of hours leaves only one conclusion. Something out there is beyond the limits of our knowledge.
Or a wizard did it. A military man shows up at Carol's door while she is sleeping. Do you think there was a thoughtful reason by the writers of why they had the military men show up while she's in bed? Or do you think Bert I said, we need to show her in her nightgown? But he gives her some mysterious news.
Yes?
Honey, I've been sent to tell you, but you won't be able to visit the colonel at the hospital for a while.
But why?
Security reasons, ma'am. I wish I could tell you more, but, well, I really don't know anymore.
Carol isn't having it, and she sneaks back into the hospital because she is curious. But we, as the audience, as I've stated before, know what's going on because we've seen the title of the film.
Could you tell me where they've taken Colonel Manning?
I'm sorry, miss. I never heard of Colonel Manning.
But you must have heard something about him.
I'm sorry, miss.
That's our government for you, am I right? Secrets and all that. But Carol is clever and figures things out. She knows where they're keeping Glenn. Finally, after a lot of sneaking around, she learns what we already know. It took over 25 minutes, about a third of the film, to get where we all knew it was going.
Now, as you probably already know, the body is like a factory. It's continually producing new cells to replace the older cells, damaged cells or destroyed cells. Now, this happens in all the different parts of the body.
Is it me, or is he talking to her like she's a third grader just to say they don't know?
Then Glenn Manning will continue to grow until he dies.
How do you know that? Now remember how I said they didn't waste a lot of time with backstory and characters? We get a little now in a dream sequence. Why, you ask? Probably so they could use a lot of stock footage of the war. War is hell. And let's recycle this footage one more time. Glenn wakes up and he's confused. Dr. Paul Lindstrom talks with Carol and tells her that psychologically she may do Glenn a lot of good if she talks to him.
I want you to move quietly and unemotionally. You know, at his size, he's capable of pulling these walls apart. His height was over 22 feet this morning.
I understand.
Okay, let's stop here and see where we're at, because the plot might be getting a little confusing for everybody out there. Glenn Manning was caught in a nuclear explosion and is growing very rapidly. Doctors don't know why, and his fiancée is very concerned. Well, I guess that's it so far. Anyway, let's get on with the film. Carol and Glenn have a quick talk, like Dr. Paul requested, but it doesn't go well.
What else can I say to help you, Glenn?
What sin could a man commit in a single lifetime to bring this upon himself?
And I know what you're thinking at this point. What the heck does the Amazing Colossal Man eat and drink? Bert I. Gordon is going to let us know.
25 sides of beef. Who's going to eat it all? They haven't had any patients out here since the war ended. You fellas must eat pretty well.
We'll invite you to dinner so you can help us. Now move this truck out of here.
A news report from an H. Wells. Do you think he is named after H.G. Wells, author of The Food of the Gods? Meanwhile, doctors try to figure things out. Carol and Glenn have a picnic, and Glenn is, well, having difficulties dealing with his illness.
You know what they wrote about me in the college yearbook? The man most likely to reach the top.
Everything's going to be all right. I know it is.
I just don't want to grow anymore. I don't want to grow anymore!
It's not going so well, is it? Doesn't he have any relatives?
There's no one. He's all alone except for me.
Wait, I've seen the sequel, and he has a sister in that, but let's not concern ourselves with that. The doctor has a talk with Carol and gives her some advice.
At first, I thought it might do him good to have you near. And of course, the government insisted that you stay. However, I'm going to recommend the security be lifted in your case.
How can you ask me to turn my back on the only person who's ever meant anything to me? Why, I've got to be here to try to help him get well.
Suppose that he doesn't get well.
Wait, is he saying that he might die, so Carol shouldn't stand by his side in his time of need? Is that what he's saying? As time goes on, Glenn begins to develop an attitude.
Man lives through plutonium blast. That's a great joke, isn't it, Sergeant? They call this living.
Come on, Glenn, lighten up. But he's also feeling some sort of pain, and we can only hope that it leads to some sort of action because we are over 45 minutes into this 80-minute film. Now, Dr. Paul needs to explain to Carol what is happening to Glenn, the reason why he might die soon, so he has grade school cutouts of Glenn created. I guess he feels the need to visually show Carol that Glenn's heart is only growing at half the rate the rest of his body is.
You will notice that all the parts are enlarging at the same ratio, except for the heart.
Does he think that Carol isn't intelligent enough to understand that without the visual aids? Talk about mansplaining, am I right?
Now, the reason for this is rather technical, Carol, but to give you a simplified layman's explanation, it might be explained that since the heart is made up of a single cell for all practical purposes, instead of millions of cells like the rest of the organs of the body, it's reacting in an entirely different manner to this unknown stimulus or force that's behind this whole thing.
Now, I'm not a doctor. I don't even play one on TV, but I don't think that's right. I don't think the human heart is just one cell. We've got about a half hour left in this film. Time for watching a doctor look into a microscope. Come on, Bert, let's get this plot moving. We have another scene with Carol and Glenn. His anger and pain are getting worse, and we, as the audience, are waiting for the Godzilla-like rampage to begin. We all know what's coming, so get on with it. Start trampling Las Vegas. Now, progress is made when doctors figure out how to make camels and elephants into the size of house cats. This might help Glenn. Is this making sense to anybody? And with 22 minutes left, we might have some action happening. You see, just as they figure out the cure, Glenn runs away. And I'm wondering if that helicopter put Bert over budget. The phone rings. Maybe somebody has spotted Glenn.
If anything comes in, no matter how trivial, if it's about the giant, call me. If I'm asleep, wake me.
Of course not.
Place a call to the Nevada State Police. Ask them to report anything unusual. Missing cattle, broken fences.
Or a 60-foot bald man. And they keep talking. Finally, something. 2 drunks.
Not another drop, Hal. Not another drop as long as I live, so help me.
I guess that joke was worth it. Now, before we get the action that was promised to us on the movie poster, we get to watch Carol sleep. And then more talking.
The symptoms were there, Eric, in black and white. We were so engrossed in finding a cure, we failed to recognize the warnings.
Any word yet?
No, not a thing.
If only we can find him before it's too late. Why did I have to argue with him?
Now another one to take the blame. I'm going to bed before it's my turn.
We get it. You need to find him. We don't need to know any of this. We saw the poster. There's less than 15 minutes left in the film. We've been waiting for over an hour. What is it with this film? I think all this goes without saying. It's almost like Bert was testing the audience patience. How long can he tease the audience with the promise of action without actually having it happen before they leave the theater?
Glenn Manning is a sick man, in mind as well as body.
Dr. Lindstrom, I'm not leaving.
I've already wired Washington for permission to lift security restrictions. Now, the restrictions will probably be unnecessary by morning anyway. Someone's bound to see him.
You had no right to do a thing like that.
I want to stop here and say, have you ever seen the original Godzilla? Godzilla starts trampling Japan within like the first 5 minutes of the film. Come on, Bert. I also need to stop here and say, what's with the giant syringe? They're trying to be funny, right? This is meant as a joke? 12 minutes left. Let's go back to Mr. Wells to tell us what we just saw. They spotted Glenn, but we need to see a scene to let us know that the 3 are going to change course.
I heard the report, Colonel Halleck. We're changing our course. Should arrive in Las Vegas in about 40 minutes, off and clear.
Why do we need to know that? And finally, 10 minutes left, we get what we've been waiting for. Glenn is surely going to terrorize Sin City. But first, a little voyeurism. Is he going to grab her like when King Kong grabs that woman in the building? No, he just walks away, and then we go back to the news. 8 minutes left in the film. And Glenn's reign of terror continues.
Are you going to stand by and let him destroy property?
That's the concern of law enforcement. Mild vandalism. 6 minutes left and we finally get gunfire. Oh wow, someone almost got hurt. Wow, look at that. He destroyed a cardboard cutout of the famous cowboy from the Pioneer Club. 4 minutes left, and the heroes of this film finally find Glenn, and I'm thinking of the poster once again.
We do not wish to harm you. We want to help you. 3.
Look out, he's breaking down!
They use that giant novelty hypodermic needle on Glenn, and he isn't happy. And we finally have a death in the film, the first one since the opening minutes of the film. To make a long story short, Glenn carries Carol over to the Hoover Dam. They convince him to put her down, and then shoot him so he falls over the dam to his death. You know, a lot of people like to point out the special effects and have fun with that, and I get it. Even as a kid, I think I realized how cheesy the special effects were, but I didn't care. It was all good fun. I just assumed the filmmakers were doing their best, and I went along for the ride. Watching it these days, I think the best part of this film is Glenn Langan as Lieutenant Colonel Glenn Manning. I think he's giving his all here. In fact, I think all of the actors who had to deal with this bizarre dialogue did a pretty good job. And the way they modulated Glenn's voice when he was big, I think was pretty effective. I just wish they would have given me a reason to care about his character. I mean, I cared more about Godzilla in the first Godzilla film than I did for Glenn Manning, and Godzilla killed thousands of people. Now I think there has to be more to Glenn's Rampage, if you want to call it that, than just him being upset and having a small heart. Maybe he could have been used as a guinea pig for the government, and he finds that out after he's growing big and he goes on this, he goes for revenge or something like that. I mean, just being a little upset, I don't know. At least King Kong in the film King Kong was going after his blonde girlfriend when he terrorized New York. That was something. The sequel to this film has Glenn running around New Mexico eating livestock. And I have a better idea for a sequel, but I think I'll save that for when we do War of the Colossal Beast. Now, Mystery Science Theater 3000 showed the complete film, so there's no need to watch the original, if you can find the Mystery Science Theater 3000 version. It was on archive.org, but they've been down for the last week and a half, 2 weeks because of a hacker. I'm hoping they're up soon. Now, for the obscure reference for the week, there is this line.
The horror. The horror. Wait a minute. Feel like chopping a cow in half.
The horror, the horror. That was a line from Joseph Conrad's novel Heart of Darkness, but it's more famous, of course, for Francis Ford Coppola's 1979 film Apocalypse Now.
The horror. The horror.
And of course, in Apocalypse Now, there's a famous scene in which they actually chop up a real live cow. Now, why don't we watch the best of the Mystery Science Theater 3000 episode of this film?
Scarecrow. Scarecrow.
Scare me? Oh, yeah, you wish.
Oh, good one, Crow.
Thanks.
Wait a minute, what the hell am I doing out here? Oh! Well, live and learn.
Oh, yeah, never drink while you're under the sun lamp.
There's always a chance.
Yeah.
That's a good one. And how is our little Johnsonville brat doing? Oh, you're thirsty, aren't you?
Stock footage is hell.
Hello, baby!
Oh.
Message for you, sir.
Oh, that's your chamber pot, sir.
Oh, no more. It's so funny.
I'm not growing. You're shrinking.
Not only am I bigger, I'm funnier. My jokes are better.
That's amazing.
Oh, brother.
That's a Sony.
Come on. He's invented the TV.
I was just remarking to the others of how different our helicopter is to yours. Over.
Keep in touch. Off and clear.
Good luck with that completely different chopper there, over.
Roger that. Yep, chopper's still different. Over. The Army's best stock footage is called to duty.
Oh, wow.
Well, I wouldn't kick her out of my tent for eating cows.
Here comes the giant.
Hey, and he's capping it up to beat the band. Are you allergic to any medications?
When I play the King and I, it's the King Kong and I.
As far as I'm concerned, the wedding is still on.
Oh, brother.
Oh, that's really good. Oh, nice cannonball, but he didn't tuck in time. What do you give him on that, Crow?
I give him a 3.5. Boy, did you see his skull on the pavement? It looked like a smashed pumpkin. Sorry. He's sorry.
Well, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. On the next episode, I'll be doing Fugitive Alien. This is another edited Japanese TV show that I'm not looking all that forward into doing. It was edited from a show called Star Wolf, which ran for 24 episodes in 1978. Of course, we do get that classic song.
Now strap in tight, let's get set for action to launch the ship out of the sand. He tried to kill me with a forklift, huzzah!
And you know, it'll give me a chance to actually figure out the plot, because I swear I've seen this a dozen times on Mystery Science Theater 3000, and I still don't know what that film's about. Anyway, you take care, stay healthy, and I'll be back sometime. You know, I've given up guaranteeing that I'll be back next week because things just happen. I hope you understand. And I've got a lot more projects I'm working on too. So anyway, thank you for watching. Take care.